The boroughs are New York City. The burbs are everywhere else. Real estate is the ultimate game of risk and reward. It's the biggest investment most people ever make. Fortunes are made over a lifetime and lost in a day. And we're not playing with monopoly money. How do you stay ahead? Who's buying? Who's selling? And why? What do they know? We want the truth. You need an edge. Boroughs and Burbs is your secret weapon, giving you the insider knowledge and strategies you need to succeed in the high-stakes world of real estate. From Palm Beach to Palm Springs, Manhattan to Malibu, we press the experts to expose the pain, find the deals, and occasionally predict the future. That's Boroughs and Burbs, Thursdays, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. Because everyone can make money in real estate.
Welcome, everybody. Boroughs and Burbs, episode 219. This week, we're doing distressed properties, and we've got our special guest, Greg Trotter of Commercial Building Consultants. Welcome, Greg. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm in actually Orlando, Florida, but that's okay.
Okay.
And we're doing great. And glad to see you guys up there in Rhode Island.
How did you get into the business of commercial building consultants? What does that mean? What do you do?
We do due diligence, monitor construction. We do forensic engineering. We have a lot of fun. So mainly our day-to-day, day in, day out is property condition assessments. So if you guys are buying assets, you need someone, a third party who's equity minded, to go in there and really identify what's going on with the property, what needs to be done, or if anything. We're risk protectors, if you will. We try and lower the risk when you acquire a property or a campus or a 70-story building, or just a regular little mom and pop commercial building. We've got one in today, 75,000 square foot warehouse up in Lake Mary, Florida. But we go all around someone's in Charleston today with us, and we just go around the country doing this in California, a lot of Texas, the Carolinas, wherever, and we've gone to Canada and the Caribbean. There you go.
So it's commercial, exclusively commercial, or?
Well, good point. I got a call recently from West Palm Beach, and they had some historical buildings they wanted to move and restore, and they can't find anyone to do that. Well, little secret is I'm from where you are, and I started my occupation in New England, and we have a lot of 1800s buildings, 1700s. My first house was 1857. So needless to say, they were happy for me to go in there and tell them what's going on with their buildings, and could they move them, and what's the likelihood that this is going to work. So yeah, I'll do houses when they're very, very special circumstances, and otherwise it's a privilege just to stay with commercial because there's no emotion, there's just numbers involved, and talking to people who care and have some skin in the game and need someone to protect them, guide them, hold their hands, and it's really a cool job.
So what is your approach? I mean, you're given a building, whatever it's, let's say it's 70, like today, 70,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
What's your approach? What's your process?
Roberto, the main thing that happens with me when I wake up in the morning for a job project is I've got to find a surprise. I've got to find something that would get missed by others, and I must find it with any project I go to. So I just did one in Daytona Beach recently. And I'm asking my question as I drive in. What are they going to miss? What are they going to miss? And there was this beautiful 300 lineal feet of masonry block fencing that was built on footings, which is unusual for Florida. And you really don't look at a white fence when it's surrounding you and it's a big office building and so forth. And you know what I found? My answer was quick, is that's it. What the problem is that the fence had started cracking and shifting on its own weight. So it doesn't look like a big deal. I checked the blueprints, and it was built for that particular property. So it belongs to them, which is a real important thing. And it needs to be removed or replaced. And it's a substantial amount of work because it's block about 6.5 feet tall. And it significant base, and that's got to go. Now, who was going to think that was ever going to be an issue? Then I tracked down the wall to the retention pond, which is really a thing down here in Florida. And that was a mess too. So you just, what you do is you go through your systems of buildings. There's your roof system, your structural system, your mechanicals, your electrical, plumbing, etc. I'm not looking for cosmetics. I'm looking for problems that are going to have to be anticipated for the next person to own the property. And it's a glorious thing. And I get a thrill doing it because I'm trying to look for whatever. So I was in the attic of this building and it was pretty precarious. And we had a maintenance guy that had been there for 20 years. And so I had a few questions after I left the attic, like, did you notice there was a leak in the front of the buildings causing some damage and wood decay? No, I missed that. I was in the attic, and I also found an air handler that showed that it had a serious amount of rust in the proper, when it was operational. And it's going to be a regular thing because it's in the attic. No one goes and visits it, right? So my job is to really gather all this information up: the fence, the roof, how's it going to hold up under a hurricane, that sort of thing, and get that information to my buyer. Where are they at? Oh, Michigan. They're colder than you are. And they're not really familiar with what we need to think about, but it's a really great property. It's a multi-tenant commercial office space, and I'm really excited about him getting it. But I think that what you need to know if you're going to purchase this property. Sometimes it's minor stuff, but the major stuff is put into an immediate needs table and a cost, and I can walk you through if you have any questions once you open up the report as to how we're going to do this. So it's a gift.
So when you walk into a distressed property for the first time, what are the first three things that you look for? It occurs to me that when I go into a house, all houses, I look for the three most expensive things, the HVAC system and the roof, perhaps, and I want to know whether they're in good shape or are they at the end of their useful life. How's that different on the commercial side?
Very different. It's a distressed property, therefore maybe it's not been vacant for 10 years or whatever it may be. So what I first look for, John, are there people there? I've had as many as 5 people arrested in the course of me doing a property. 5 sheriff. The sheriff was tired of coming out and picking people up, and I need to assure him that I would stand by that they were trespassing. So I had to sign a commitment, and we had 5 people cutting copper pipes on the property, and I was just doing my thing. You've got to make sure there's no one on the property that's could hurt you, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that if it's a property that's distressed, what's not happening is maintenance and repair and that sort of thing. So I went to a property and I found that I was walking in water, on the ground, and I wasn't wearing boots. But anyways, where was that water coming from? I went into the building that was nearest this water situation, and the basement was full of water. So there's a water leak, and turns out it's sanitary sewer, not clean water, but dirty water. So what you're doing is looking at what could really be a risk to me, and you're looking for what could be a risk, to my security. And I go to the fundamental things like that. When I pulled into a property, it had been raining. It was like I was launching a yacht. You watch everything that's happening from the minute you go past the entrance sign, and keep track of all the things that really could impact me or my client. And so those are things. And the site is where a lot of storm drainage issues are and so forth. And so I start right at the exterior and get really tight with the property and then go from there. And by then I should be comfortable with what I'm going to run into as far as risks inside the property, I hope.
So I showed a property yesterday, commercial property. And so on the one hand, my investor said, I'm really interested in this because I love this location. This is a fabulous location. but what do I really need to know about it? And I said, well, first of all, the first floor of this commercial property has been a dry cleaner. And the second thing is it's a mixed use. There's 3 apartments upstairs.
Right.
I said the first thing you need to know is that buying a dry cleaner in Connecticut means it's an establishment, and there's all kinds of legal things
Right.
that you need to know if you're buying a building that's been a service station, a dry cleaner, or any of these uses that
Yeah.
automatically trips illegal requirements. And then the second is if it's a mixed use building with apartments upstairs, well, that's a different set of legal maneuvers in
Yeah.
terms of a lot of people like to buy commercial buildings and call you up and say, inspect this, because they don't want to have to deal with residential tenants. But in this case, you have residential tenants
Yeah.
and you have commercial tenants. So talk to me about some of the things that, red flags that you hear when you hear of such a building.
Well, you've got a really good point. Is that, yeah, you need an environmental site assessment, obviously, to be done. And your bank is going to want that anyways, John. So you told them the right thing is what's going on. And it has to be a phase 1 minimum and go from there.
What's that mean to my non-commercial people out here? Phase 1. We don't usually do phase 1s on houses.
Yeah, that's true. Phase 1 is basically a format, ASTM format, that tells you what you have to do at minimum to do a site, environmental site assessment. So there's a visual site survey, as well as you have to follow up with about that much paperwork of what's happening around that property and what sort of risks you have. And you put all that together, and you have to meet that standard to tell them what is their risk and what's the past activities have been. And when I'm out there, I'm looking for underground water monitoring of that sort of thing, wells that should be right in the pavement.
But a phase 1 is just a report that's gone back through the records and describes, hopefully, any environmental liabilities that might be attached to the property. Is that right?
That would be a screening, but a phase 1 really also includes a site visit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if a phase 1 is essentially clear, where there's no red flags, you don't have to proceed to the next step, which would be, I guess, a phase 2, which would be required under what circumstances, and what would that involve?
If you find a buried oil tank, if you find some probable unusual situations with the land, that all things are dead, or there's all of a sudden something that gives you an indication there might be a reason for sections of the property to be brown, or nothing will grow, or died, or whatever it may be. But typically, I find phase 2s are if there has been a real issue with, like, all of a sudden we see a demonstrable issue with a portion of the property that is related to environmental in a way that it was buried oil tank or that sort of thing. And what's the story on this? And I ran into one recently, and I couldn't believe it. And it was this far from the lake. And I guarantee you that is probably going to be going to go to a 2. Well, it should be pulled anyways. But if you have that much, if you have a buried oil tank that close to a high water situation, it's a kind of a given that it's going to go to phase 2. It's going to be pulled, and what they're going to do is they're going to get down in the soil and see what the soil says as far as has there been contamination from leaks with the tank. And that sample goes to the lab that we use, and it starts from right there. And I have found many over my lifetime of buried oil tanks that have leaked. Not less and less now.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is your client in Michigan says, I want you to go inspect this commercial building. It's an office building. And, at what point do you say, I really think you need to order up a phase 1. I really think you need to hire an an engineer, a structural engineer, an electrical engineer. I'm not comfortable with what I'm seeing, electrically. At what point do you say you make recommendations for additional testing? Because he's relying on you, this guy in Michigan, to evaluate this property. Because in the commercial world, we don't buy properties because we're going to live there. We buy
Right.
them because you told us that it made sense on paper.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. So I've been doing this so long that I can tell you when there is an anomaly that is, say, with the HVAC system, and all of a sudden we see mold or issue, or there's going to be an indicator somewhere, a flag that would tell me, hey, I'm going to need to bring in a structural engineer or whatever. I would, and I'm not bashful about it. If it's over my head, if things are wrong with, like I said, a mold issue or a balancing of the air conditioning from one floor to the next, or degradation with the piping, and on and on and on. So the threshold is a cost threshold for the most part. It's $3,000 and more for being listed as immediate need with a system. There's normal maintenance, and you're just going to say it needs to be maintained, but you don't make a big deal out of nothing. You make a big deal out of something. So when it goes into immediate need mode, then you got to back it up and make sure that they understand where the problem is, what the problem is, and take care of it. So it's that, but
I'm going to run out
obviously
of power because this is no longer powering my iPhone.
Okay, I'm gonna hook you up to make.
okay. Anyways, do not ever feel bad about calling in for additional consultant for whatever it may be. And, it could be a roofing contractor, it could be whatever. And I'm always glad to guide them so that they do not impale themselves on huge amounts of dollars that have to come out of their pocket because I was bashful about saying this needs further study. And I make sure they know it right away. I'm sorry.
These tests, the phase 1 and the phase 2, are for example, for a lender, and for the owner themselves. But if the owner hypothetically is, let's say they're paying cash, this is a complete hypothetical, paying cash, and they are willing to absorb all those risks, it's just an FYI to them.
Right. Yeah, and that happens, but mostly it's for banks. We just got a call on that 75,000 square foot building, and there's an empty 2-acre lot next to the property, and they are thinking they're probably, because they're going to have a bank lender on this property, that they're going to really have to have that done as well for an environmental status assessment.
Well, we're spending a lot of time talking about environmental. Would you characterize environmental as the greatest unseen risk, with the greatest liability? I mean, after Surfside down in Florida, it made us all much more aware of concrete degradation, structural degradation over time. But so I would put structural degradation up there with environmental issues as the big two. Am I missing any?
No, you're not. And the key thing is life safety is where you're going structural or whatever. So it could be not related, say, to structure, but you could see, there's big errors or indicators with the electrical system, the plumbing system, whatever it may be, that could be a real risk for the tenants and the people who are visiting that building. So you've got to be not shy about life safety as being, in fact, I put life safety as an issue when I may identify it in the report so that it kind of gets them off their ass to go and check this out. Come on. We're talking people's lives, and you don't make something out of nothing. That's the key. You get it right.
What has changed in your industry in the last 10 years in the sense of what are the new things that you are having to test for that you never had to in the past?
IR, infrared, so you're monitoring, you can check electrical panels now, and, you put a camera and face it right to a window, a door. It'll tell you if there's water. It tells you if there's too much electricity coming off of electrical panel, that sort of thing. And it can clearly identify that this needs further assessment by an electrician, for example. So there's a great example.
So this is technology that is affecting the industry.
Yeah, it's fantastic. One of the cool things that you guys need to know about is that we get a building fax system, so that if you give me any address, I can give you what's happening as far as permitting and what has happened as far as that history, which is really convenient because every municipality has a different system to keep track of permitting. And sometimes it's really hard to find. Depends on every municipality, it's different. So we can really track down information like that. So that's pretty cool too. That saves you a lot of time and liability. So we just put that we call it bill fax, right in the report. There it is. And it tells them a roof.
I want to hear more about this IR. So you point an IR infrared, and I get it on the electrical panel because you're looking for warm spots that might indicate an electrical problem. But you said you also look for water. I thought that was a different system, but I do know that when we have concerns about mold, we look for how much is there an elevated water content in the drywall? Where else? So give me some specifics about the kinds of tests and what they tell us about a commercial building.
Well, I can stand in front of Roberto's building there that he's sitting in at night, and the infrared will tell me if there's hot spots or cold spots, right? So if water is infiltrating into around his windows, and so what happens is that it gets warmed up during the daytime, hopefully when the sun's out, right? Or evaporation is a cooling, so you'll have, if you have water issues, you can see it where in the evaporation is a cooling section of the building. So you trace this stuff down, you find out that there's missing sections of insulation, missing sections of structure. It's fascinating.
Or somebody's cutting out all your copper pipe.
That could be it too. But a friend of mine has his own college for IR. And he's going to go down to Sunrise, Florida. They are now looking to have everything with the electrical systems, with the municipality inspected. Take 1 month, 30 days of everything being analyzed. The buildings, everything. And if you think about electrical systems, even like your utility companies, they have need for IR for their analysis of their equipment as well.
I would imagine that the insurance companies are asking for this. Have they caught up? Are they rewarding buyers who go through this extra level of due diligence on distressed properties?
Not yet, but it's coming. Yeah, it's
going to be. Once they watch this show, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be like flipping a switch.
Well, it really is. Now, for example, let's pretend we're manufacturers, we're building stuff. What about the wheel up 30 feet from here, and it's part of a pump or whatever? When you walk through the plant and you trigger onto that, and you can see that there's a lot of heat coming from a particular component in the building. Or get this, what if you have a lot of hydraulics and you're using air pressure for doing manufacturing? The IR can actually tell you where there's leaks in the piping for the compressed air for equipment to do fabrication, and on and on and on. It's fascinating, and it's getting more complicated and getting more intense and more accurate. And it eventually will become a requirement.
What do these tests cost? Like, what are the costs behind these?
Well, great question. You probably, Sunrise job will be probably about $50,000, but say it's just a building to do the IR, depending on if you want a drone fly over it or just exterior or whatever. But it's like $3,000 to $23,000 depending on your scope. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's an investment. I mean, you could spend quite a bit of money and never pursue the building.
Yeah, but watch this. Let's say that you do find something, for example, just a leak, even an air leak. They can actually tell you how many CFMs you're losing and what's the value of that and how much the compressor. There's value in everything. And yeah, you're right. But I think the big thing is life safety and finding out that your piece of equipment is going to break down the next 3 days or whatever. And you can justify almost anything. And become much more familiar with the general public.
So let me ask you something. And here in New York, we have a local law like 97 that's coming. And it's about efficiency for buildings. A lot of these pre-war buildings, it's difficult for them to be efficient. And buildings, I mean, the budgets for these could be millions of dollars per building.
Right.
And would some sort of technology like that help these buildings assess how to comply?
I would think so. Again, I'm not familiar with exactly what the requirements are of that particular New York statute, but it certainly would help the owner and operator and the guy that pays the bills for sure. See how effective really you are with your windows and doors and what's happening on the roof and so on and so forth. So especially in cold environments like you're in, I mean, it really will just stand out and slap you on the side of the face. So I'm not sure about New York's statute. So,
can you share an example where an assessment saved maybe one of your clients from a big disaster? Give me one of those juicy stories that you said, some of these insane things that you've seen.
well, yeah, I could use quite a few items, but references of experience. But one was when I walked the property, I walk off the property, right? So I was walking. This was along a river in South Carolina, and there was a curb cut in the road to the property, and it called me to the curb cut. Said, "Greg, walk into the woods here." So I did. So get this, John. I went in there and went through the trees. Never developed, and I find this great big hole in the ground. By hole, I mean probably 60 yards of soil missing. And then I looked very closely at the bottom, and I could see these broken pipes. They were drain pipes. Now, okay, if you remember, it's a curb cut off of the road that I used to get into the property. That pipe is underneath that road. And it was turns out after I looked through the surveys and the analysis, it was for a future project to be built. So the guys ran in and they put in these underground pipes, drain pipes, and then they must have done a great job, right? But I felt like I was Frank Hardy of the Hardy Boys. I'm looking down there and I'm going, oh my God. And then I'm starting to think, okay, let's go back. So where did all this dirt go? So I go back and it turns out that drain pipes are very obvious when we have backups and we don't have good flow off the parking lots and the entrance and so forth. They said, you know what, at the entrance, when we have a lot of water, a lot of rain, we have to go around and go through the exit to get out. You know, in other words, one side of the whole road is blocked because it backs up at the drainage basin. And a couple of the retention ponds were kind of cloudy. Now, where's that coming from? Now, I only can presume, and so can you, but man, I felt like felt like $1 million because this is what you're buying, and you don't know who owns this, what's the responsibility, but let's make sure that that's up for conversation between the buyer and the seller and what the hell's going on here and who's going to pay for it, because it really could impact that property, and it probably already has. So those are the sorts of surprises that I just look forward to. But fundamentally, I just run into a lot of different things every day, and I'm really happy when I can give you exactly the list of what things to worry about. Nope.
I mean, yesterday I spent a little bit of time. You know what? I'm going to make a little public service announcement here to all you clients out there and future clients out there. You owe it to yourself to walk the property and go down to town hall and ask for the file.
Yeah.
And a lot of buyers say, well, that's why I have a realtor. Well, that's why I have an inspector. That's why I hired the inspector. Public service message number one is you should do this. You should understand what it is you're buying, and you should do the investigation. And you should not rely on your realtor, and you should not rely entirely on your inspector, and blame them later when something comes up and it was missed. If you go down to town hall, and I did yesterday with a builder who's looking at properties, and we looked at the 1953 surveys, the 1955 subdivision. We looked at all the different things that had been filed with town hall for the last 70 years. And some of them talked about right-of-ways. And to your point, if somebody built a drainage or there had been a house there previously, then there might be an underground oil tank. And for the cost of a few $100s, you can scan the earth and at least look for it. But I don't think you can evaluate based on what your realtor tells you and evaluate fully based on what your inspector tells you. You have to go and walk the land yourself. You have to pull the records and look through the file.
Right. And then since we're talking about distressed property, John, there's always going to be some unforeseen conditions. So let's be grown-ups here and be prepared if we're converting a property from a D to a B or whatever it may be. Just imagine, right? Or I've done 3 properties in Jacksonville that have been vacant for 10 years. 2 were done, one's in the midst of being done. The point is that there's going to be unforeseen conditions, and we know this as grown-ups, that things have happened over a period of time that you can't find, and therefore you should always be prepared for, what's been missed varies by the inspector, by the contractor, and so forth. And it could be the cast iron pipes, the sewer pipes, right? At this age, they're kind of like us, right? They're getting too old and they crack and they break. So I know automatically if I see cast iron in the ground, it's probably a $300,000 or $400,000 issue over a good sized multifamily housing project, right? And then that means you got to scope it. And even when you scope it, that might not cover all the costs. So again, when you're going to go after the challenges of working on a distressed property, be sure you get a lot of thought into it, and your personal due diligence, John, is welcome. And talk to the building inspector, talk to the neighbors, talk to everybody to really be comfortable with what you're getting yourself into, because it can be a serious setback when you find out you have a $2 million problem that you didn't anticipate. And that happens. That happens, my friend.
In a distressed property, this is number one thing that goes wrong with this distressed property. Then this goes on, then this, what is the order of distress that tends to happen in these buildings?
We start at the roof, right? So you have roof, then roof leaks. And then one of the things that they're not maintaining, right, Roberto? So they're suddenly not doing the required maintenance on the property. And then. So you walk the property looking for drainage issues. One I had from the Jacksonville area, we had to redo all the drainage material around the foundations because the water was actually coming through the front entrance and water falling down the stairs and going out the back of the building, and all the doors and entrances to units were impacted, and on and on and on. You just can't imagine what you run into. It's okay. It's an opportunity if you're educated, if you have the right team to fix the problems, whatever you may run into. But this was a lot of work. So you have to see, and precisely what John was saying is do your own due diligence as well as whatever everyone else is doing. And a lot of the stuff is very evident, but roof leaks are usually one of the biggest issues that can really do a heck of a lot of damage inside, mold issues and do structural damage and so forth. So let's get ready. And this is Florida, so we have termites to add insult to injury. And a lot of termite damage that can occur over 10 or 15 years or whatever. And so you have to be, I've done thousands of termite inspections in my life. So I'm pretty good at it, but I don't see everything, you know. And if you have dry woods, they don't have the tunnels, they don't have the indication, they're inside the building and they can do damage without, I have to have my house fumigated. I have some dry wood termites in my own house, and it's part of life in Florida. And you got to get over it and just belly up to the bar and get it done. So I've got that in the schedule.
So do we differentiate between we have a current termite problem, pest problem, versus we had one once before, but I see no current evidence of pests? I live in a 225-year-old house, and once they pull open the walls, they're like, wow, you know, it's like Swiss cheese. But we don't see, you know, don't know how this house is still being held up. And so, but they say, but we see no current evidence of termites. These are 100-year-old termites. So, I mean, do we still have a problem if if we don't have one now?
Yeah, it's called hidden damage, John. I can't see behind the walls. I can't see through the drywall. So what you do is you check for history, and that's really not that tough because there's drill holes. If you're gonna have, if you have subterranean, there's has to be. If I tested your building that you're looking at or whatever, and you did some termite work, you have to put a certificate of what you used, what chemical you used, and what the name of your company is, and what the date was. So I'm pretty ready to find where those certificates are because they're in the building. They're plastered on electrical panels, water heaters, whatever. So on the property I just did last week, I had 7 certificates of inspection, and 3 were indications of treatment. And so I had, you know, immediately told my client and this potential acquisition, you need to get the history since it's been 30 years, is to 36 years. What happened so far? And it's got the name of the company, David's Termite Company or whatever it may be, and you follow up, but you can't see behind the drywall, so you have to be as aware as possible, and there are risks.
And if you see evidence in the basement and in the attic, sometimes you recommend that we invade the drywall and look behind it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You really need to when you know that there's I found evidence of live, as we call it. That would be wings and bodies and frass. Frass is the poop. When you see a lot of evidence like that, it's time to start opening up some walls. They can even say, yeah, we treated for that, but they treated for it, but what about the damage? So I've had cases where Swiss cheese is a correct comparison, and you've got to be aggressive to start looking as to what should be opened up. And in some cases, I found that there was a pretty severe issue with one, and they went back and they started opening the walls. The termite company that held the warranty guarantee went out there themselves, and they opened up walls. And you know what they did? They called the buyer to come and we're going to show you some damage. And you know what? The buyer was too busy, and they bought the house. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, there's no way you guys are going to do that. And you just have to be open to what should we properly do for good conduct and keep us out of risk and cost, right? So that's what you have to do every day. And that's what that's what I'm for, is to push you in the right direction. Maybe you should be looking at this or whatever. That's what I do. it's we have a little meeting afterwards, just like a business meeting, and I'm going to tell you, okay, you ready? Are you sure you're ready? Okay, here's your problems, and that's what we're going to talk about.
I mean, one of the things, big red flags that I'm finding is that when I do go down to town hall and I ask for the history, the building permits, and either they haven't been closed or they were never pulled in the first place,
Yeah.
then you begin to realize that what you've got is an owner who did things himself or did things on the cheap and didn't file for building permits and therefore it wasn't inspected after every project.
Right.
So I think you can learn a lot from the file about the owner and how it's just like buying a car that's got a full maintenance record at the dealership versus the car with no maintenance records. Well, a house is even more complicated than a car. Well, I don't know, maybe not today's cars, but a lot of different systems, any one of which can be tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so if you start to realize that the owner hasn't pulled any permits, that's a major red flag and actually kills a lot of deals. Some people just walk away when they see that. They just walk away. They're like, I know it's pretty, but I don't know what I'm buying.
Well, you and I have done something pretty stupid in our life. And we've bought old homes that, John, we never get all that history on. And boy, it's a big risk, and it took a lot of perseverance on your part and my part to get through it. But you love this old house, but you really weren't. You just did it. You bought it, and oh my God, right? Oh my God, the stories we could compare over a beer. Like you wouldn't believe what I found. I got underneath these crawl spaces in these houses in New England. Oh my God, there's like that much space, and it's filled with rocks and beer cans, right? And off you go. It's there's risk and everything. Let's lower the risk potential and we call it a build fax. You have a Carfax, there's a build fax, and that's exactly what we pull on every property we work on.
I get comfortable with distressed properties. Of the last 6 I've owned, 2 of them I've bought out of foreclosure or out of probate, including the one I'm in now.
Yeah.
So I believe that you can get your arms around a distressed property and say, okay, what is the risk? I mean, is this potentially tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? And am I buying it well enough that I can absorb that? When I bought my own, it had been on the market for 4 years, and I bought it from the bank for the cost of the note. And I didn't know what all the problems were going to be. I didn't have perfect knowledge, but I was okay with that because I talked to my inspector and I knew just about how bad it could go. And you know what? And we missed some things. We didn't take down the walls, and we didn't know that a lot of those 2x4s were compromised and had to be sistered. But I think that added tens of thousands to the house. It didn't add hundreds of thousands. So it's an educated risk. I've run into problems that you can't see with septics in Connecticut, where the septic has failed or is cracked. That's been recent. And that's actually rather common. So to get a specialty septic inspection, I think is very important around here. And another one that people don't talk about is how much is the well producing. They probably talk about that out west a good deal more. But we take it for granted that if you have a well, it just makes water here in Connecticut. And some make water at 9 gallons per minute, and some produce at 50 gallons, per minute. And there's a big difference. If you're producing at only 3 gallons a minute, then you probably need either to dig a new well or you have to have some kind of water containment system in the basement. So these are the kind of things that I don't know that an inspector would be able to look at your well, scratch his chin and say, yep, that's a good well or a bad well. But I do think that those records probably exist or should down at town hall.
Yeah, I'd absolutely second you on the septic inspection, absolutely positively required for for any property that has one. And the things we have in commercial buildings is lift stations. And you would not believe how many of those are in bad condition. And no one cares, no one maintains them. It's behind a fence. And imagine what happens when your lift station stops or breaks. What happens? It builds up and goes into the first floor of your hotel rooms or whatever. So that's good. Second thing you mentioned is water testing. So, of course, I work with laboratories on testing, and I bring samples. And you really should have, if you have a well, let's get the water tested. And even radon. I've had radon tests on water because it was going to be a restaurant or something. So part of the specifications was to test for radon in drinking water because of the well. And that I was comfortable with that, and I agreed. So we took care of that. So you got it, and everybody needs to go into this thing with their eyes wide open. And I appreciate that.
Number of tests that you guys have just mentioned is just like a scroll.
Yeah.
Of just this. How do you know which ones you actually have to do, should do? How expensive? That just starts to add up. Like you're buying John, you're talking about buying a residential house. Let's say it's $1 million. How much are you spending on all of these tests?
It for what it's worth, it's nothing. It's a percentage of what the cost is nothing compared to what the value of knowing, especially if you and your family are living in this house or whatever, and you know that my water, I lived in Epsom, New Hampshire. I had a 14-foot dug well, and I tested it, and I knew that my family was drinking some of the best water ever anywhere. And on and on and on. And so there's a comfort level, right? That you have when you do all the right things, or at least you tried. And the key thing is you tried. You did test. You did do this. You did do that. And get over it, pay it. We're in a risky situation here, especially with distressed. So you need to have a contingency for unforeseen, and you need a contingency for something that you're going to, as you move from owning it to exit, what's the exit supposed to look like, and how much is it going to cost to get to that exit? And you need to put together a CapEx budget over your whole 5 years, 3 years, whatever it may be. And let's start talking like finance, real finance, about what's going to happen with your investment. And let's make sure no one gets too badly hurt. They're going to get some surprises like John did, but let's not make sure that it's not horrendous.
I think to answer your question, Roberto, each incremental test may only cost a couple $100. I want you to test for lead in the water. I want you to test for arsenic. I want you to test for bacteria. And each one of these things, maybe because you suspect that, the well is not that deep, or the prior tests indicated heavy metals, or prior tests indicated a high bacteria count. So there's usually something prompting you to do additional testing. Same thing with the roof. Many inspectors will come, they will say, based on the reports, this is a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old roof. It's got one layer, or it's got 3 layers on it. But I'm not a roof expert. If you have concerns, you're going to have to hire a roofing company to either go up with a drone or climb up on the roof. Most people do not opt for that. They're happy with what I would say, the cursory assessment of the roof, and they know what a new roof would cost to put on. So they can, that's a finite problem. If your water is absolutely bad and cannot be fixed,
right,
well, then that's an unknown liability.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, more and more, are doing more water testing, and they're testing for more different things in the water, And now mold is right behind it, where people are asking for mold and different kinds of mold. I've had clients walk away from 5 or 6 houses based on the mold tests.
Smart. Good job.
Well, I don't know. You know what? I'm going to complain now.
Yeah.
In my investigation, I could not find a standard in Connecticut for how much mold is too much mold. So that's the complaint. I'm going to tell you that radon, has an EPA level, and they say, it's safe below that level. But there is no magic number on mold. So it's very subjective. And it makes my job as a realtor much tougher because I might say, oh yeah, no problem, just a little bit of mold. And who am I to say? Or, oh, that's a lot of mold, or no mold.
It's just the right amount of mold.
It's just the right amount. And it's the good mold, not the bad mold. So it's just way too subjective at this point. Come on, people, this is 2026. Let's put some standards around this.
Yeah. Well, when we do a test, we know the number of spores per, whatever you're testing for cubic feet and so forth. So it'll tell you what type of mold it is and to what degree. And you take a test sample outside, so you know what's going on outside, as well as various spots inside. And you'll have a fairly good analysis of if you got a problem or not. But to be honest, if it's pretty strong, I would move on.
I think if it's pretty strong, you have to find out, well, what's causing it. Maybe that's an indication of a water leak, and we really need to fix that roof problem or that plumbing problem. And then boom, mold is solved.
I think that's one thing that I do is that when I run into an issue, I don't know the capabilities of my client, right? They might have the cracker nut jack people to do this or do that. So I don't try and scare them or, I tell and inform them. And they may have the best capability of rebuilding that basement wall that's got a crack in it or whatever it may be. And so you need to tell them. And then they can percolate the information and wrap their arms around it and decide we got this. And you'd be surprised at what resources people have, whether it's friends, family, neighbors, whatever, or contractors and so forth, and go from there. It's really important. Get it right.
I've got this question at the bottom of my sheet that we sent you.
Yeah.
If for investors looking at distressed opportunities today, what's the smartest way to underwrite risk before making an offer? And when does it move from fixable to financially unviable? It occurs to me that we had a guy on our show, Roberto, only a couple months ago, Connecticut Basement Systems. In order to win business and provide assurance, he provides a lifetime guarantee. If you hire him to waterproof your basement, he will guarantee it for life. And I think that's and that's why he's so successful, because that's what people want to hear. That you're going to solve this problem and I'll never have to think about it again. That's what I mean by fixable to financially unviable. He can fix that problem and guarantee it. I'm rarely given that opportunity in the commercial world where I can buy a property and get it fixable with guarantees.
Well, yeah, but there's, for example, if you have a commercial building, the 75,000 square foot building, when it was re-roofed, it would have been roofed probably with a 20-year warranty, and that's maybe or may not be transmissible to the next buyer. But there's
I bought a commercial building with a flat rubber roof.
Yes. So you get
lives what you're describing. Yes. Yeah. And you know what? It does leak all the time.
Yeah.
I got somebody up on that roof every year.
There you go. So there's warranties with HVAC systems. There's various warranties with components. So we keep aware of that, and we actually opine on, is there probably or isn't there a warranty with regards to this equipment? And if there is, then let's just make sure it is transferable to the new buyer. Yeah,
Okay, so
we're there for that.
fixable means I can get service contracts. I can either inherit or buy service contracts that come with a guarantee. What makes it unviable? Walk away, client. Walk away.
Well, again, I'm not judging my buyer, but if it's a really, I've told people in some cases to run, not many, but where it's so magnanimous of an issue with structure or whatever it may be, and it's going to be a project that's going to take a long time and a lot of investment and unknown as to what we really need to carry for that repair. And it's so disruptive in what you have to do. For example, if all your cast iron wire pipes in a 10-story building that was built in 1963, it's going to be a week a leak. Every week you're going to have a leak, and you know where it is. It's going to happen on a Sunday, right? In unit 305 and then 1033 or whatever. This building probably needs to be repiped. Now, talk to me. That's a lot of work. Think about all the laterals and horizontals with a cast iron plumbed building.
Sidebar, cast iron is very brittle. So cast iron, bad. Copper, good. PEX, plastic tubing, good?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we like PEX, we like copper. We don't like cast iron. It's brittle.
Well, we don't like cast iron that's 1960s. Yeah. They have a pretty hefty life, but when you get to 50 years old, no.
But the waste pipes are often cast iron, and that's okay, right? The waste pipes? The waste pipes, those big fat waste pipes?
No, that's the ones I'm talking about. Is the sanitary. And let's go back to copper. It all depends on what the water quality is. So in Florida, you probably will never see a copper pipe, because what happens is with our water here, the domestic water is so aggressive that it just causes the pinhole leaks. And eventually, after about 3 leaks, you're sick of it and you just repipe the whole house, which is not as intense as running cast iron pipe, because those are big pipes. But virtually every building does not have any copper pipe in Florida. And that's why, is because
guys are missing out.
I know.
And when, you know what? And when all those people in Florida get tired of those pinhole leaks, you send them up to Connecticut and New York. Roberto and I will take care of them. We got room for all those Floridians who are tired of their crappy water quality. We're going to help them out.
So that plastic piping is the best alternative.
Yeah, because again, it doesn't get deteriorated by the chemicals in the water and so forth. Yeah.
I think this has been fascinating. So any parting words, Greg?
I think that after listening to us today, you really should have taken away that maybe think about this a little deeper, a little further, make sure that you're comfortable and you're not putting your family's finances or your company's finances or whatever in danger. And really, let's do a good due diligence up front, and let's get through this, and let's put the right mindset to, if you're taking on that sort of effort, let's make sure that you're going to be happy during the whatever you do for renovations, and then through to when you're going to balance the property out, and then when you exit. And I want you to be real happy with the exit. And that's my job, and that should be your job too, to make sure that you've accounted for everything as best you can. And then carry contingency. My ratio for contingency on really hard properties that are really rough is like 15% or more. And a typical normal property that, you know, doesn't have any abuse, any issues whatsoever, like a 5% contingency. But don't be bashful in putting enough money down in that budget line item. Who knows? Please take care.
All right. So I guess follow-on question. What am I looking for in an inspector? I mean, Roberto's going to recommend 2 or 3. John's going to recommend 2 or 3, and they're all just names and phone numbers to me. What am I going to ask that inspector to know he's the guy? He's my partner.
He's the guy. Well, it's we're not the least popular is equity level inspectors, meaning that if you're underwriting a deal, who do you not want to go there? Me. So who do acquisition people hate the most is that they get the deal this far and then Trotter shows up and CBC shows up and we find out these things and we're not bashful telling you about it and this is how you handle it. And that's really a good thing. So we are a very unique situation where there's very few of us, very few that you can find that actually do the intense level honesty, talking to the equity level investors and things like that. And my job is to take risk away from you and your company and your friends and whomever that are involved with the property. And they got to talk like that. And they got to talk from their heart. And you can tell if they're just superficial. And a lot of my competitors, most of my competitors are debt reports. Debt reports are to banks, to HUD, to Fannie and Freddie. My reports are to the guy who probably has a lot of investment that's going into his property. So these capital groups I work for and so forth, they are very smart, very good, and they hire CBC.
Do they hire you only in Florida, or will you consult to people all over the country?
All around the country. We've been in 47 states. We're a lot in California. We're in Texas a lot, Carolinas. We've been to the Caribbean, of course, and Canada, a couple of provinces of Canada. We'll go where you want. If you really care to have us there, and if you really want to know, you should probably call Commercial Building Consultants.
And where can people find you, Greg? Where can people find you?
Yeah, our website is cbcteam.com. At cbcteam.com.
Commercial Building Consultants, CBC. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Orlando, Florida.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Greg. This has been really great. I think you know what, many people, we just rely on our realtor, and we should, but I have to say that realtors are sometimes afraid of guys like you because you kill our deals. And so I think that you provided great advice today for a lot of people that they should think hard about who they're hiring to inspect, and they should dig deep, that there's a lot of hidden liabilities out there, and they should be willing to walk away. And a hard-nosed inspector like yourself might be their best friend. Thank you, Greg.
Right. I can sleep well. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you next week. Roberto, can I ask you one thing before we exit?
Please.
Did you not put out a market report today at robertocabrera.com?
I did, John, but didn't you write your piece every Thursday, right?
I did, but I was particularly struck today by your market report where you said that inventory has been getting lower for the last several years in New York.
Yeah.
That's great news.
No, it's not.
No, inventory. Why is that?
Our inventory is contracting, so there's fewer deals to happen.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that means that there was activity and people are buying up inventory.
No, I mean, we definitely have demand, but
yeah, that's great news.
And we have things to sell. It's just that it's slowly contracting.
Okay. Wow.
And a second point you made was that any Fed action to lower rates, if the market's not ready for it, may have an adverse effect on long-term mortgage rates. 100%. The takeaway was anybody who's waiting for a late spring change of Fed policy to make their move might be waiting in vain.
Yes.
Well, I look forward to reading that.
That is correct.
And the third thing I learned was the Lux market, top 10%, very robust. A lot of deal flow at a healthy price point.
Lots of deal flow. Something like 65% of all of our deals are all cash. It's something like 85% of all deals that are over $4 million are cash.
And distressed properties as a category in New York are having a tough time.
Well, we don't have really distressed properties as far as residential. What we have is properties that need renovation. And properties that need renovation suffer. They're selling at 70 to 75% of value.
Is that because I can't get financing to do the renovation, or it's more expensive? Or is it because a lot of people don't know how to renovate a distressed, tired?
It's everything. It's cost prohibitive. While you're renovating that for a year, you have to live somewhere else and pay that. You also doing a renovation in New York is complicated and it's difficult. I mean, when we did a renovation, we combined apartments years and years ago. Every day, the phone rang. Those hinges you wanted to use, that's a little awkward. We got to use these other hinges. How much is that? Another $800. The next day, another $400. The next day, $2,500. I never wanted to answer the phone. I mean, literally.
So there's a reason distressed properties aren't like the great value and the great opportunity in New York. They come with a lot of headache, and you have to be a specialist.
You have to be willing and financially able to make that happen. Because that's where you get the best value. You buy an apartment that needs work, you're getting a good deal. You're getting, for the most part, you're getting brand new, or you're getting what you want out of that. So
you heard it here first. Don't wait for the Fed.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Greg. From me, guys. Take care,
See you
guys.
next week.
Johnny. Take care.